Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Broadband Deployment News. Ookla has come out with some updated information on performance for Starlink in Europe. Be right back and we'll take a look at that. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Broadband Deployment News. I'm Rick Uzzi with Zcorum. Thanks for joining me. If you're watching live, feel free to interact with us via chat on YouTube or drop a comment on YouTube, whether you're watching live or after watching the recording. I'd love to hear from you. So I saw a couple of stories about Starlink speeds and Ookla, and it's funny, look at two stories here that had different headlines, so it's funny how you can kind of spin something with a headline. So this was in light reading. It says Starlink slows down in Europe as more users log on. So that seems very negative. That is a fact that as more people log in, the service slows down. But you see here, new speed tests from Ookla show that Elon Musk-owned Starlink satellite internet service registered slower speeds in the fourth quarter of 2022 in all European countries surveyed, compared with the same period the previous year. As more people joined the various networks, users in Germany, for example, experienced a slowdown of at least 16%, while in the UK, speeds fell by at least 19%. So that's the kind of the focus of that article. Then there was another one here. I saw Starlink fastest for broadband in 8 European countries, says Ookla. So they're both looking at the same Ookla data, and they're kind of spinning it a little bit differently. This one, SpaceX's Starlink is the fastest way to get broadband in 8 European countries, but fixed broadband was faster in 4 more. So that seems fairly even-handed there. The latest survey from Ookla for the last quarter of 2022 says that the Starlink satellite service was faster than fixed broadband in Austria, Belgium, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Germany, Ireland, Italy, and the UK, with speeds normally around 100 megs, though the Czech Republic scored only 64.67 megabits per second. And there's more on that story there. So I linked to both of those in the description on YouTube, and I linked to this. So I figured we'd just take a look at the Ookla data, and we can all decide on our own what we're reading here. So this is Ookla Insights article, Starlink resurgence, ? Speeds increase in Europe and Oceania. Oceania is kind of like Pluto. I didn't grow up knowing Oceania. When I grew up, Pluto was a planet. So, and it's not now, apparently, I guess. I think they still have it demoted. But Oceania, Australia, and some islands around there, I always just thought of Australia as the continent. So Ookla is back with exciting fresh data from Q3 and Q4 2022 for SpaceX's Starlink and SkyLogic in Europe and Oceania, as well as new Starlink markets we haven't yet featured in our ongoing series on satellite internet. With the FCC greenlighting Amazon's Project Kuiper, so Amazon is going to be launching their own satellite service, and they're getting ready to do that. They put a lot of work on that. And many other exciting satellite developments launching this year. We're certain all eyes will be on the sky in 2023 as new orbital connectivity options become available for consumers. And this is good to have more options. We know that satellite is great if you're in an area that is really incredibly hard to reach. It could be in the middle of the ocean, could be on plains. It could be, just on top of a mountain somewhere where you've got maybe line of sight to the sky, but you can't really get good wired internet. So it's a great option to have there. It's also great to have the option just as a competitive kind of broadband service everywhere, if possible, although generally people are going to go with fiber if they have that available, obviously, if they've got some kind of wired internet that's good, but it's still good to have in lots of different places. This analysis includes Starlink results from 6 new countries and data from Starlink and SkyLogic in Europe and Starlink in Oceania. We also examine how Starlink's internet performance has changed over the past year in Australia, Austria, Belgium, Croatia, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Poland, Portugal, and the United Kingdom. Starlink mostly speeding up again from Q3 to Q4 2022, but is still slower than a year ago. So they've had some recent improvements, and that's good because what tends to happen is as they add subscribers, speeds will drop. So they had seen that over the long term as they added subscribers. They launch in an area and speeds look good, and then they get more subscribers, speeds drop. But then they launch more satellites and the speeds get good again. So there's this kind of back and forth with satellite service. So you're seeing here Starlink performance in select countries in Europe and Oceania. So you've got Australia. So what you're looking at here is you see at these lines, you got SpaceX's in the purple. You've got download, all providers combined is the straight line, and then upload is all providers. Dotted is the, let me see here, download. All providers combined now I'm looking at these. So Australia, I knew the purple is SpaceX, and all providers combined on the solid line is the download for all providers, and then upload is the dotted line for SpaceX and Starlink, I think. So dotted lines upload, yeah, that's what it is. So basically it's gray is everybody, purple is Starlink, and then the dotted lines are upload, and the solid lines are downloads. There you go, sorry about that. So we got Australia, and you can see Starlink again over time. So this is what we're looking at here is Q3 2021. So this is going back a couple of years to Q4 of 2022. So you've got Australia, and you can see there's a dip. So they launched, and they were well over 100 megabits per second, and then they dipped some here. You can see that other providers really stayed flat, and the uploads are always much lower in these situations where you don't have, let's say, symmetrical fiber service. You've got lower upload speeds, and both of those are pretty close. You see Austria, again, started out pretty high, peaked about here, went down, and you can see there's a little bit of increase in the all other providers category. Belgium, again, you see kind of this trend of up and then down. And again, it looks like they've started to tick up again here in all of these countries. And again, hardly can see the difference between the uploads. Now, Croatia, again, seeing similar kinds of patterns here. France is interesting because you had Starlink exceeding the other broadband providers, but when Starlink took their dip, it looks like the wireline services from all of the providers increased, and the upload speeds for wireline providers was higher and increased. So I'm assuming there's more fiber here in France. You've got Germany. Starlink started out higher, but they've gotten a little bit closer there. Ireland. All of these, you're seeing the dip from Starlink, but again, a little bit tick up towards the end. But in some cases, an increase as I'm assuming these countries are deploying more fiber. You're seeing their wireline services for all of the providers combining, increasing. And then you got Netherlands. You see a crossover there where Starlink is now slower. New Zealand crossover here, but then going to about being the same there. But again, big difference in upload speeds. So I'm thinking in New Zealand, a lot of fiber deployment over that time. You've got Poland, big dip there. So they were ahead for a while when it launched first, but then they dipped quite a bit. And then Portugal, again, a dip right there. So finally you get Sweden, about equal now. They were ahead in the beginning there. And then United Kingdom, big dip, and then slightly recovering here in a slight trend up again for United Kingdom in all other providers there. So that's a good snapshot of what's going on with Starlink. And again, it shows you what happens when they launch the service. They have fewer subscribers on it. And then just as you get more subscribers on that satellite constellation, it gets more congested. When that happens, the service declines a little bit. They can launch more satellites in that constellation. So they can launch more to cover that area and get additional bandwidth. As Starlink rides the wave of becoming an increasingly popular connectivity option for consumers, we've seen the service speed up and then slow down. As I say, that's kind of the trend year over year in most markets. However, Q4 data shows many countries are experiencing a modest rise in median download speeds when compared to Q3 2022, so the prior quarter. That's encouraging for consumers, especially as Starlink hit over 1 million users in Q4 2022. So it's already pretty successful service, again, mostly in areas that don't have good broadband service, or even here in Europe where they're exceeding, I guess it's not good then, they're exceeding a lot of these wired providers and being able to get up over, let's say, 100 megabits per second down. And it could be a sign that Starlink seems to be maturing its constellation capacity. That's particularly intriguing as Starlink launches more next-gen satellites, which were first deployed at the tail end of fourth quarter 2022 and will most likely show up in Q1 2023 results. So those next-gen satellites, much bigger, more capacity. So they will be seeing some increased capacity from those as they're doing that. In Europe, all the countries we evaluated for year-over-year median download speeds were slower for Q4 2022 than Q4 2021. So you're looking at a year difference there where, again, they launch the satellites and then they get more subscribers and things slow down. So I'm not going to read through all these stats. You can read through those. And we looked at some of the charts there. Starlink in Denmark and Switzerland had the fastest satellite internet in Europe during Q4 2022. This is satellite versus fixed broadband internet in Europe, and this chart's showing you, again, purple is Starlink, No, I'm sorry. In this case, oh, I'm sorry. Here are the different providers. So we've got all providers combined Denmark, and you can see we've got our uploads and our download speeds. So again, upload speeds are always going to fall quite a bit short of the downloads, but you see in Denmark, they've got pretty good upload speeds there compared to other places. And same thing here in France, as we saw, France had increased quite a bit. Then you got other places, not so much. But again, you see Starlink is going to be hovering around this range. Satellite, they're going to be not, here you've got, looking at the chart here or at the legend, you've got 0 and this is 50. So we're probably talking about maybe 10. What would that be? Yeah, maybe 10 if you're right about here. So, that's probably 20. So you can see most of these other providers have better uploads than Starlink's going to have. Here's all providers here in Croatia, Czech, Italy. It's a little bit better. And then you can see here your bold is where Starlink is on the downloads. And you can see that compared to other locations. So you've got all combined in Switzerland. You're looking at that line. Then you've got France, all combined in France. Then you've got SpaceX, Switzerland. So I'll let you look through that as well. It's too hard to kind of go through this in this broadcast, but you can see that's a nice chart to compare. Speed Test Intelligence, which is an Ookla site, I'm not sure, this didn't make any sense to me, reveals there was no fastest satellite provider in Europe during Q4 2022. Though Starlink in Denmark, 147.52 megabits per second, and Switzerland, 136 megabits per second, led the pack for fastest median download speed. And all Starlink download speeds were faster than 100 megabits per second in 10 out of the 15 European countries during Q4 2022, a rise from just 5 out of 15 in Q3 of 2022. So they increased pretty good there as far as leading the pack. But I didn't understand the statement there was no fastest satellite provider in Europe, because I would think surely Starlink is going to be faster than other satellite providers because they're low Earth orbit satellites. They're orbiting 200 to 300 miles above the surface, I think, compared to 30,000 or so miles, let's say, for a geosynchronous satellite. So they're faster. They've got much lower latency. The constellation compared to a single satellite or a couple of satellites. So I'm not sure what they're saying there. There was no fastest satellite provider in Europe. Again, you've got some figures here that you can read through if you'd like. And again, I'd link to this Ookla article in the description of the video, so you can check that out. Starlink in New Zealand was the fastest satellite provider in Oceania. So again, you can look at those figures here. So you've got your Starlink numbers. Again, this is on the upload side, and then you've got the download side there. So you've got your all providers combined right there for upload and download. So much higher on the upload than Starlink, but on the download, Starlink's lower on download as well in New Zealand. You got SpaceX, Starlink, Australia. And then you've got all providers combined in Australia. So they're looking better in Australia. And you've got Tonga, SpaceX, and all providers in Tonga. So there's probably not much, not the best wired internet in Tonga. So they're doing better there as well. Again, more figures here if you want to check them out. Starlink countries show very promising result. New Starlink countries. So Ookla started measuring additional countries this go around, and they're showing some promising results there. You can see they've got Japan, Bulgaria, Finland, Malta, Latvia, and Jamaica. And you can see those compared to other providers in Latvia, Bulgaria, Jamaica, etc. Speed Test Intelligence shows that 6 new countries where we found new Starlink data are off to a roaring start in Q4 2022, and there's those figures. Mentions consumers and enterprises stand to benefit from satellite developments in 2023. So there's lots happening in the world of satellite broadband. So it mentions Amazon's Project Kuiper, approved by the FCC. They're going to have 3,236 satellites in a low Earth orbit array. So their satellites orbit further away than Starlink satellites. If I recall, they were maybe like twice the distance, maybe 600 miles, something like that. Latency's not that different because signals travel really fast in a vacuum. So there's not that much difference between 300 and 600 miles. But having that further distance allows them to have fewer satellites in their constellation. Whereas Starlink is wanting to launch, if I remember, at least 13,000. I think they were trying to get up to like 10 times this, maybe 36,000, 33,000, something like that. But they're going to need more satellites just because they're closer to the Earth. Viasat set to launch Viasat 3 arrays around April 8th. So Viasat's been a long-term player in satellite broadband, geosynchronous. So again, 30-something thousand maybe feet up there. But they're planning on providing something up to 100 megabits per second. That's a huge improvement, it says, for the mainly GEO provider. Again, geosynchronous Earth orbit. While consumers won't likely see these results until Q4 2023, we're very excited to see how Viasat improves its network. Eutelsat's merger with OneWeb, approved by Eutelsat board. Second-gen array being planned, so they're looking at that. The European Commission forges ahead on constellation Iris. So the European Union's been working to create its own satellite constellation since 2020. And during November 2022, agreed to a plan to commit 2.4 billion euros for a third satellite array named Iris, in addition to Galileo and Copernicus. Project which includes geosynchronous MEO and LEO. I'm assuming that's middle Earth orbit, maybe. I didn't look that one up. And low Earth orbit. Arrays will help support EU connectivity priorities, including the economy, environment, security, and defense. It's hoping to launch in 2024 to be fully operational by 2027. So will that be a consumer offering? I don't know. It doesn't mention that. Usenet aiming to launch Jupiter 3 array in H1 2023. Not sure what H1 is. It's like a H1. It's not a Q1. Incumbent satellite internet provider HughesNet is planning to launch its new Jupiter 3 array in the first half. First half, H1, okay, first half of 2023, which will help expand its network capacity, doubling the size of the used Jupiter fleet over North and South America. While it'll still be a geo constellation, the added network capacity will alleviate congested networks and give consumers more bandwidth to use the internet. They'll have more bandwidth, but speeds may not, it's not going to be probably a huge increase in speeds. We'll have to see if they get up over the 100 megabit per second. And it mentions Ookla will continue monitoring new satellite internet developments. So interesting information here. There's as you can see, there's a lot going on with satellite internet. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that, see what happens with Project Kuiper. That's going to be an interesting one with Amazon, because Amazon, like SpaceX, has their own rockets. So they don't need to rely on somebody else, to, like some people rely on SpaceX to launch their satellites, and SpaceX owns Starlink. Well, I believe Amazon, I think it's Blue Origin, I think. Is that what it is? So they have their own rockets and can launch their own satellites. So they have a good footing to be able to compete against Starlink. And again, they won't need as many satellites because their satellites are in a higher Earth orbit. So instead of maybe 13, 15, 20, or 30,000, whatever it is that Starlink's planning these days, they say they only need about 3,000 or so, 3,600, whatever it was. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. If this was interesting or helpful, if you could give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate that. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, click the bell to be notified when I'm live. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.